Many years ago, in a small town near Boston, there lived an old shoemaker named Mr. Walter. His tiny shop stood on a quiet corner street. The walls were cracked. The wooden sign outside was faded. And every morning, Mr. Walter slowly opened the shop with trembling hands. He was poor. Very poor. Some days, only one customer came. Some days, none. But despite his hard life, Mr. Walter always smiled warmly at everyone. People in town often wondered why. Because nobody knew his story. The promise he never broke. 40 years earlier, Walter had been a young man deeply in love with a woman named Emily. Emily believed in him when nobody else did. When Walter had no money, when others mocked his dreams, Emily stayed beside him. Before they got married, Emily once told him, "No matter how hard life becomes, promise me you'll always help people when you can." Walter smiled and promised her. But life changed suddenly. Only 1 year after their marriage, Emily became seriously ill. The treatment was expensive. Walter worked day and night fixing shoes to save her. He barely slept. But despite all his efforts, Emily passed away. Walter's world collapsed. After her funeral, people thought he would leave town forever. But instead, the next morning, he quietly reopened his small shoe shop. Because he remembered the promise. The secret nobody knew. Years passed. Walter grew old. Children in town noticed something strange. Every winter, poor families somehow found repaired shoes outside their doors. Single mothers found children's boots fixed overnight. Homeless men discovered warm shoes waiting beside benches. Nobody knew who was doing it. But it was always Walter. Quietly. Without asking for attention. Without expecting money. Sometimes he used his last few dollars to buy materials for strangers. One freezing night, a teenage boy entered Walter's shop. The boy's shoes were badly damaged. Snow entered through the holes. Walter asked softly, "Can you pay for the repair?" The boy lowered his head. "No, sir. I'm sorry." Walter smiled gently. "Come back tomorrow." The next day, the boy returned. Not only were the shoes perfectly repaired, Walter had also placed warm socks inside them. The boy almost cried. Because nobody had shown him kindness in a very long time. The final winter. 1 year, winter became extremely harsh. Walter continued helping people despite becoming weak and sick himself. Neighbors often told him, "You need to rest." But Walter always replied, "There are still people who need help." Then one snowy evening, Walter never opened his shop. The town became worried. People gathered outside and eventually entered quietly. Inside, they found Walter peacefully sitting in his chair. He had passed away during the night. In his hands was an old photograph of Emily. And beside him was an unfinished pair of children's shoes. The entire town fell silent. For the first time, people realized how many lives Walter had secretly touched. The unexpected discovery. A few days later, townspeople cleaned the old shop. Inside a small wooden drawer, they found hundreds of letters. Letters from people Walter had helped over the years. One letter said, "You repaired my shoes when I was homeless. Today I own a business." Another said, "You helped my son during the hardest year of our lives." Another simply said, "Thank you for reminding me that good people still exist." The townspeople cried while reading them. because the poorest man in town had actually been the richest in kindness. The legacy. Months later, the town rebuilt Walter's tiny shoe shop. But they didn't turn it into a business. They turned it into a free community center that helped struggling families. Above the entrance, they placed a small sign, in honor of the man who fixed more than shoes. And every winter after that, people in town began secretly helping each other, just like Walter did. Moral of the story, Sparkles. You do not need millions of dollars to change lives. Sometimes, a small act of kindness, a helping hand, or a warm heart can inspire generations. Because true greatness is not measured by money, but by how many people are better because you existed.